For this video, I'm going to be doing a full walkthrough tutorial of a look that I have been doing for so many years. I call this eye look the classic eye, and it's classic for a reason because it goes with everything and it will never go out of style. It's a look that I've always done when I'm doing lip swatch videos because it literally goes with everything and it kind of suits every genre. I custom made this little palette from Necromancy, so I'm going to start off with this lighter bone shade. And using a flat brush, I'm just going to pat that all over the eye. I'm not going to be using a primer today. I don't often use eye primers, especially if I've got a little bit of concealer over my eye and I know that these powders aren't going to really smudge. I generally don't really gravitate towards using eye primers, and I realized the other day it's because I don't really wear my makeup any longer than like 5-6 hours. Next, I'm going to take this really dark shade. This is like a blackish brown. These are all matte shadows as well. And I'm going to use this little pencil brush, and I'm just going to start off by building a darker corner right here, and I'm just going to use a patting pressing motion. This doesn't have to be super blended because we'll blend that later. Anytime we're building color, we're using patting and pressing motions. And this shape in the corner is just kind of a little bit of like a CV shape. Next, I'm going to take one of my favorite blending brushes. The secret to a good eye makeup look is brushes, and the best secret is a really good blending brush. This is the Crozet D220, and this brush is perfect because it's got a little point on it. I'm going to take this cool taupe shade. I'm just going to get it on the tip of my brush, and I'm going to get all sides of it as well. I'm going to take that brush and I'm going to stick it right there into my crease, in between my eyeball and the brow bone, and I'm just going to windshield wiper motion sweep that through the crease. Essentially here, you're letting your bone structure do the work for you, and then the brush as well, just by blending back and forth. See how that immediately blended that little darkness for us? I keep my eye open during this. And I'm not taking the blending up too high. I'm depositing most of the shadow on the outer corner and just sweeping whatever's left on the brush onto through the inner corner of the eye. That darkness is basically blended now. I'm just going to tap a tiny bit of that dark shade on the tip of this brush. I'm going to use that just to tap and blend over that little outer corner and to darken it up a little bit. Remember, wherever you lay your brush first, the most color will be deposited. So I'm depositing it over the darkness that we've already done, and then blending whatever's left to kind of expand that C shape. I'm just dipping back into the shadow and adding tiny little bits at a time just to work up that blend. Just going to wipe the brush off a little bit, and I'm going to tap back into that taupe shade. I'm just going to make sure that this blend between the bone shade and the dark shade is just slightly blended. Dipping back in a tiny little bit. And just essentially adding tiny little bits of shadow, going back and blending until you are happy with the blend. That blend is good enough for me. If you want to really redefine that lightness, you can dip back in with your flat shader brush and press that shadow back down and see how that creates a little tiny cut crease right there. This eye look is generally just about dipping in a little bit, blending a little bit, and then sometimes with the blending you will lose intensity of a shade, so you can just go back in and press and define that shade again. Underneath the eye, I'm essentially going to do the same thing. I'm using a little pencil brush. I'm going to just pat that underneath the eye. I'm almost using like the side of the pencil brush for this. Patting that shadow down. For underneath the eye, you almost want to follow this imaginary line of your lower lash line up like that. So we're just building and following that imaginary line. Next, I'm going to use my favorite little blending brush. This is a tiny blender for underneath the eye. This is the Cosette S185 brush. I'm gonna dip it into that taupe shade. I'm gonna use that just along the edge of that harsh line that we've created, and just using little back and forth sweeping blending motions just to blend that in. You could definitely use this brush for this step, but it's going to give you a bigger blown out look underneath, which I love. I'm still using that little small brush following that imaginary line of my lash line. Just little back and forth sweeping motions to blend underneath the eye. I feel like I don't get a lot of fallout with these shadows, but out of habit I dip in and then I tap off a little bit. Doing that tapping motion will make sure that there's nothing excess on your brush that's going to fall onto your foundation. One thing that I definitely leave out of my little mini tutorials is this step where I'll get my foundation brush or my concealer brush and I'll just lightly sweep it upwards here, following that imaginary lower lash line shape. Sweep it up just to give a little bit of shape to the shadow. It's a little harsh right there, so I'm just gonna use the edge of that brush. It's got a little bit of foundation still on it, just to almost erase / diffuse that area. While you're blending, sometimes you lose that density of color, so you can go back through and tap more of that darker shade on. Tap and press. Then going back and blending it through with that lighter taupe shade. I'm also going to use this brush to just kind of shape the outside corner here. If your eyes are slightly hooded, what you want to do is look straight ahead and blend that crease just ever so slightly above, just like so. Gives you a little bit of a lift, but now that's a harsh line. So I'm going to go back through with this blending brush with a little bit of taupe still on it, looking straight ahead and just diffusing that blend. It's subtle, but see that lift that this side has compared to that side? I don't know how that got pinky because I swear these brushes were clean, but I think I accidentally laid my brush on this red burgundy shade in here. I ain't mad about it. Happy accident. I'm gonna be extra right now and just get a clean dome-shaped fluffy brush, and I'm just gonna blend that through the whole entire crease and just make sure that that's all blended nicely. Going back in with that flat shader brush and a little bit of that bone shade and just lightly highlighting the upper brow bone. Being a makeup artist that learned makeup in the early 2000s, I'm a little bit fearful of too much brow bone highlight because, oh my gosh, we used to go to town on it and then it just became so uncool to have a highlighted brow bone, but now I'm back into it. Add and blend a little bit more until you're happy with it. I like that shape. Once you're done and happy with that, you can either leave it as is, you could add a little pop of a highlight on the inner corner of the eye. I'm gonna add some liquid liner. I'm gonna use a product that I have loved for so long. This is like the liner that doesn't fail me. And I feel like this is a brand, an indie clean brand that has kind of been forgotten about, The Balm. I love this liner, I've been using it for years. This is like your OG traditional type of liner. I'm going to just try to create a smaller wing. We'll see if it stays small though. Starting by just doing a lash line. I'm gonna attempt a wing and hope we don't ruin everything. Eyelids are starting to hood on the edge. So I'm just gonna draw this outwards, kind of following that imaginary lash line as well. I do my liner a little bit straighter these days, straighter this way rather than angled up. Just creating that little line and then drawing it back inwards. See how that wing is a little bit straighter? I used to do it a little more angled upwards, but now I prefer the straighter angle. Let's see if we can do it on the other side. When I'm doing eyeliner, I'm stopping and checking by looking straight ahead to see if they're somewhat even. Some people are perfectionists. I've learned to kind of give myself a little bit of grace when it comes to having perfect liquid liner. It's a motto that I stick to with liquid liner, and sometimes it's called quit while you're ahead. If you find that you're getting frustrated with your liner and you're just not going to get it right, what you can do is grab an angle brush. This is the Nikki LaRose N11 brush, and I'm just going to tap that dark shade onto this angle brush, and I'm just going to tap that over the eyeliner that we've done, and that's going to diffuse any wonkiness that we've got. I'm just using a tapping, pressing motion with this. And see how that just diffuses and smokes the liner out a little bit. If you have any little bits where you need to touch up, this side needs a little more darkness, I'm going to use this tiny blending brush, a little bit of that darker shade onto it. And just make sure that this side is nice and blended above, and it needs a little more underneath as well. I think I'm also going to quit while I'm ahead right here. And just for good measure, I usually take my concealer brush or foundation brush and just do that sweeping up motion. You can see if I was to draw an imaginary line from my lower lash line like this, up that way. And then after you're done with that, you can take a little bit of concealer and kind of just re-zhuzh that under eye area just a wee bit. This just makes the under eye area pop a little bit, and then you can kind of see if you're finished with your eye look. I'm using a dome-shaped concealer brush, and I'm not really getting it onto the eyeshadow that we've just diffused under there. Just using a patting motion, because you don't want it to be a harsh, crisp line underneath. Well, I don't anyways. All right, I'm happy with that eye look. I'm gonna do some mascara, but first I always curl my eyelashes, and I've had this lash curler since I did my makeup course in 2005. Whew. She's old. The lash curler, not me. I'm just giving it a few pumps. I'm going to take my Too Faced Naturally Better Than Sex mascara. I'm going to swish the outer lashes towards the side. Whatever's left from those sweeps of mascara, I'm going to just softly blend underneath the eyes. I don't like too much bottom mascara. Adding black on the waterline would actually add a lot more drama to this, but I'm going to keep it fresh and pretty, a classic eye just as is. Next, I'm going to take this small Blend and Set Janie Patinkin brush. I'm going to use my cream contour. This is my eyeshadow shade M112. Add a cool toned contour instead of using blush. I'm going to be swatching quite a few different undertones of lipstick, so a cool contour basically goes with all shades. I like just a small little brush like this for a contour because it doesn't get too big and it deposits the shade where you want it to be. Okay, after today, my favorite highlighter is really done. This is the M99 highlighter from MOB. I'm just going to take my 3 fingers and I'm just going to pat that onto the cheekbone right here, not too far inwards because highlighter highlights texture and I have a lot of texture underneath my eye. M99 from MOB. It is truly stunning. On the cheekbone and up on that brow bone just a wee bit. The inner corner seemed like it needed to be finished, so I'm just adding that light bone shade as a pop on the inside. And there we go. There is an eye look that will literally go with anything. This is one of the first eye looks called a classic eye that I learned at the Napoleon Purtis Academy when I learned makeup as a little baby in 2005. This is really similar to the makeup that I wore for my wedding with a red lip, but just a little bit more drama and with lashes. And it literally suits any genre, any style, any lip color. I was even watching The Craft last night and I noticed that they had very similar eye looks like this as well. So it's truly a classic eye that spans any genre, that you're not going to look back at and be like, what was I doing in that era? I hope that you found this tutorial helpful and maybe you've learned some new little tricks. Obviously, I've gone for cool tones because they essentially go with everything, but you can do this with warm chocolatey tones, basically any eyeshadow. Thanks for watching.